us a little about your research?
How long do we have? All right, I was just joking. I started out in the early 60s, 1960, as a scientist trying to understand the genetic effects of the fallout that was occurring in the world at that time. The Americans, the Soviet Union, and the Chinese were exploding atomic bombs. And there was fallout all over the world. So as a young person, I wanted to know, will there be human health effects due to the fallout of radiation? I subsequently evolved in my interest because I was studying human genetic syndromes that were very sensitive to radiation, and they got cancers. But then I realized these genetic syndromes that get cancer could also get cancers due to chemicals. And just about that time, an author in America wrote a very interesting book. It was called The Silent Springs. And it had to do with the fact that in America and worldwide, many birds like eagles were dying. And nobody knew why. But she speculated, she hypothesized, that the widespread use of pesticides, chemicals, were going in the environment and affecting the eggs of animals, of birds, fish, and all of a sudden the governments of the world didn't pay much attention to radiation anymore, but started to pay attention to chemical pollution. And so I moved my research from radiation effects on human health to chemical effects on human health. And while I was doing that research, I got introduced to what in our body leads to the cancers. Because we have 100 trillion cells in our body, but only a few cells give rise to cancer. So I started working with a man who believed that those cells in our body that gave rise to breast cancer, brain cancer, lung cancer, liver cancers, started from stem cells. Now, what are stem cells? I always tell my students, think of a stem cell like an acorn or a seed. When you look at it as that single acorn or single cell, it looks plain, simple. But as it grows, it sends out roots, stems, branches, leaves, flowers, fruit. All of those things from one single cell indicated that the root, the branches, the leaves, the flowers, the fruit, all had the same genes in that acorn or seed or stem cell, but they expressed them differently in each of these branches, leaves, fruits, and so forth. So I wanted to understand why cancers arose from the stem cells of our body. And that took me maybe 10 more years of research, just understanding how stem cells could give rise to cancer. But all of a sudden I realized cancer is not the only human disease that comes from stem cells. We can have all kinds of diseases from stem cells, including now premature aging, because we need every day stem cells to replace the old cells of our body that are dying or removed, okay? And if we lose those stem cells, we can't replace the tissues and we age, okay? I'm an old man. I'm 74 years old. If I cut myself, I still can have wound repair. So I still have some stem cells left, but I don't have as many as I did as a youth. When I was younger and cut myself, not only would the wound heal faster, but it wouldn't leave a scar. But now I cut myself, it takes days and weeks for it to heal, and it always leaves a scar. All right? Finally, after 45 years of doing research, I am here today and this week to give a lecture on what I think is a major, major contribution to diseases around the world, here in Brazil, in America, in Europe, in Africa, everywhere. And what it is the fact that we as individuals are probably made more sensitive or more resistant to diseases when we are in utero in our mothers. Because when our mothers are pregnant, she is eating various kinds of diet and food. She's smoking, she's drinking alcohol, she's taking medication, she's in a stressful environment, she's exposed to pollution in the environment, and all of these chemicals are going through her placental wall and into the developing embryo and fetus. And those chemicals, depending on what the chemical is, will affect, let's say, the stem cell of the baby's brain, or the baby's liver, or the baby's lung, or the baby's eye. And as a result, when the baby is born, it depends on the chemical. The baby may be born with a birth defect, that's number one. But more often than not, the baby is born looking normal. But when he or she reaches puberty later in life, all of a sudden, the particular organ of that baby's body has been altered by either an increase of stem cells or a decrease. Now think about this. If during development in the pregnant mother, the mother takes a chemical that increases the stem cells in the part of the brain that makes neurons that are necessary for thinking, that baby may be very bright later in life. On the other hand, if during development the mother is taking a different kind of chemical in her food or drug, and the chemical is now affecting the stem cells in a different part of the brain, so when the baby is born, it's autistic. It doesn't know how to socialize, okay? And we're seeing that happening today. And finally, to give you one more example of where I am doing my research today, I'm very concerned that we scientists have learned so much, so many details about human health and human disease, and we are not educating the public. We're not educating even the healthcare system. We're not even educating the doctors in a way that can usefully take our basic knowledge and try to prevent diseases in the future. Let me end by saying, as a basic scientist, after 45 years, most of my science now is public education, because most people, the taxpayers who are supporting this research, they need to know how their taxpayers' money is being used, especially in healthcare. Today, around the world, and even in Brazil, probably 95% of all of the limited healthcare resources Brazil has is devoted to crisis medicine. By that I mean the patient breaks his leg, has a burn, gets shot, has cancer. He or she wants to see a doctor, wants to go to the hospital, and wants the healthcare system to take care of the disease or a trauma that he or she has at the moment. So only a small part, only un poquito of our healthcare resources are devoted to prevention. Like trying to tell the public, don't smoke, or don't get exposed to too many radioactive materials. Don't eat the wrong foods. So doctors should be telling their patients this, but most don't. School systems should be telling the public this, and most don't. And this is a big problem. We have so much science today that can be used to prevent diseases, but it's not going out to the public. Today, your mother and others have organized this conference to educate young physicians, whether they are animal doctors or human doctors, that by studying both, information from animals can be used to understand humans and vice versa. But even more importantly, I hope a few of us at this conference are going to tell these young practitioners that they are going to have to spend more time in prevention, utilizing knowledge for prevention, as well as utilizing knowledge to take care of crises. So, to answer your simple question, it's taken me 10 minutes to describe how I started 45 years ago as a young, inexperienced scientist, only narrowly looking at one small aspect of human disease, till finally 45 years I'm traveling all over the world trying to educate globally people to educate the public how important it is, especially to protect the developing fetus, embryo, fetus, and newborn. Because remember, When a baby is conceived, it has no choice of the genes he or she is going to inherit. When a baby is developing in the mother, it has no choice of what the mother is being exposed to or eating. Even when it's born, it has no choice of what the society is providing him or her to eat, have a decent environment. And it's only when they become young, mature adults do they have a little degree of freedom to behave in a way that protects them from diseases. But even then, they don't have complete control, because if they don't have a job, they can't eat good, nutritious food. Even if they have a job and have some money, if their society isn't taking care of the environment, they don't have control over that either, you see. So the task before all of us scientists is truly to make the public understand you need basic research to acquire knowledge. But if that knowledge isn't used, it's no good. And on the other hand, you can't apply to the public that which you don't know. So obviously, the taxpayers of every country need to support basic research. But the scientists, once they generate knowledge, the scientists must make that knowledge understandable and affordable and accessible to the general public. And that's about all I can say.
So do you think an event like this could help in collaborative work between researchers?
Oh yes, that's what every scientific international meeting is for. It's to exchange the latest information to all the scientists of the world. This is a little bit different because the audience, by and large, are young students. When I go to international scientific meetings, the people who are attending are highly specialized scientists in my area from all over the world. And each one is trying to understand what is the latest scientific breakthrough information, because they want to hear it now. They don't want to read it in a journal 6 months from now. Because once they hear it from the man or woman who's made the major discovery, they can run back home, and instead of trying to stumble on the same information maybe 2 or 3 years later, they can start where that person made the breakthrough today. All right? So that's what a scientific meeting is all about, is to exchange the hottest information now to the specialists of the world. And this is a special type of meeting because that information now is given to the younger, inexperienced students in hopes that they can leapfrog. It's just like today in China. China doesn't have to build landline telephones in that big country. They can now use a cell phone, all right? I grew up in a country where until just the last 10 years, everybody had to communicate with a telephone, a landline telephone. And in fact, until 2 years ago, I didn't have a cell phone. But today, every young Chinese has a cell phone. They probably never have seen a landline telephone. All right? And that's why you want to get young people the latest information so they don't have to spend 45 years to get to where I am. Right? So that's the reason this is a special one. Right?
Thank you, sir. We are all eager to listen to your lecture.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
I look forward to it too.